Hello students, welcome to your WebSeek.Academy English channel. Today, we are going to discuss the poem To the Foot from Its Child, which is a part of your second PUC English syllabus. This powerful and symbolic poem is written by Pablo Neruda, a Nobel Prize-winning poet from Chile, known for his deep, emotional, and socially conscious poetry. A note on the poet. Pablo Neruda, 1904 to 1973, is the pen name and later legal name of the Chilean poet, diplomat, and politician Ricardo Elisa Neftali Ruiz Basulto. In 1971, Neruda won the Nobel Prize for Literature. Neruda became known as a poet while still a teenager. He wrote in a variety of styles including surrealist poems, historical epics, overtly political manifestos, a prose autobiography, and erotically charged love poems such as the ones in his 1924 collection 20 Love Poems and A Song of Despair. Neruda's poetry is renowned for its fantastic imagery and surreal use of language. The surrealists attempted to express in art and literature the workings of the unconscious mind and to synthesize these workings with the conscious mind. Background. To the Foot from Its Child is the translated English version of the original poem Al Pai Desde Su Nano, written by Pablo Neruda and translated into English by Alastair Reid. The poem appears in the collection of poems titled Extravagries, published in 1958. Extravagries, Book of Vagaries, is the English title given by Reid. To the Foot from Its Child summary. To the Foot from Its Child by Pablo Neruda is a narrative descriptive poem which narrates the journey of a child's foot until it becomes an adult foot and beyond until it dies. Besides narrating the experiences of the adult foot until its death, the poem also describes the changes that the child's foot undergoes until it becomes an adult foot. The journey of the child's foot is similar to the journey of life. The poet uses the foot as a metaphor and conveys his view of life. This metaphor helps the poet to convey the idea of how the child's spirit gets crushed through the challenges and restrictions that life places upon him. Thus, by personifying the foot, the poet expects the reader to compare the experience of the foot to the whole person's hopes and dreams as well as to the realities of everyday life. By and large, one can infer that the poem is basically a criticism of how people force children to grow in society and forget all their dreams and aspirations. The child wants to be a butterfly or an apple, but society is harsh and forces the kid to become a responsible adult doing responsible adult things. The transition of the child's foot into an adult foot and then until its death can be studied under 4 stages conveniently. The 4 stages are childhood, experiencing reality, maturity and death and rebirth. A brief description of each stage is given below. 1. Childhood, lines 1 to 2. The first stanza describes the characteristic features of the child's foot. It is an infant's foot and it does not know that it is a foot at all. It lacks awareness and hence it dreams of unlimited possibilities. It would like to be a butterfly or an apple. The foot has an optimistic view of life. 2. Experiencing reality, lines 3 to 16. Here the poet highlights the impact of time on the child. As the infant's foot starts growing in the outside world, it begins to experience the harshness and pain of life while walking. When it steps over stones and bits of glass, streets, ladders and the paths in the rough earth, it learns that its role is that of a foot the same way people become aware of their role in life. It realizes that it can neither fly like a butterfly nor become a bulged apple on the branch of a tree. The child's foot has now discovered that it is only a foot. Its spirit loses its battle against the world, is taken prisoner, and is condemned to live in a shoe. It also means that the child's spirit becomes aware of its limitations as a human being and understands its role as a social being in human society. Now, having been imprisoned in a shoe, it gradually tries to understand the world in its own way. It is alone and cannot communicate with its counterpart, and gropes blindly in the dark like a blind man. The foot is not in the open, and whatever ideas it forms about life are formed in the confined space of the shoe. Here, it means it is not in touch with reality directly. The society decides what it should understand about life or the world outside. Gradually, the foot adapts itself to its world and learns to cope with the harsh realities of life. 3. Maturity, lines 17 to 46. In this part of the poem, the poet gives a graphic description of the changes seen in the child's foot during its transition from a child's foot to adult foot. The soft nails of quartz in the child's foot gradually grow hard and change themselves into an opaque substance hard as horn. The tiny petaled toes of the child's foot grow bunched and out of trim. The toes in the adult foot appear like eyeless reptiles. Later they grow harder and become calloused. In this stanza, the poet attempts to let the reader know that as the child grows into an adult, it becomes less open to reality. It also means that people grow harder both physically and emotionally. The phrase, faint volcanoes of death, suggests that the foot comes to appreciate mortality. Thus, we find that the child's foot has now been transformed from a beautiful form into a warped and ugly one. The poet then describes the journey of an adult foot until its death. It is now like an eyeless reptile. Hence he calls it a blind thing. The adult foot is now in the harsh world outside, suggesting that the adult gets trapped in the routines of everyday life or the humdrum commonality of existence. It is now less capable of enjoyment and finds life difficult in every walk of life. It slogs and slogs either as a man's foot or as a woman's foot working in the field or market or mines or ministries. It toils in the shoe, day and night, scarcely finding time to enjoy the pleasures of life or sleep. It works without respite and finally meets with death. 4. Death and rebirth, lines 47 to 53. Soon after the death, the adult foot gets buried. It goes down into the underground. It finds everything dark there. It also does not know that it is dead and has ceased to be a foot. When the foot dies and is buried, its consciousness is childlike again. Therefore, the foot revisits the possibilities of flying like a butterfly or becoming an apple. Here it means that people consider the possibility of an afterlife. To sum up, the freedom of childhood is lost when a person becomes an adult and is exposed to a life of constant work and struggle. Outside, uncontrollable forces have the power to direct one's life, and thus, life in society takes away people's free spirits until they are freed again by death. The human promise is not fulfilled by those whom society enslaves and mistreats. The poet imagines that the naked foot of a boy, innocent still of the habituations of social society, does not know that it is a foot, or a butterfly, or an apple. Only through a long process of denial of our embodied natures, beginning with the simple act of wearing shoes and thus denying contact with the earth, does the boy become a man. However, upon being buried, he still does not know if he will fly or become an apple. To the foot from its child comprehension 1. 1. What would the foot like to be? Or, mention one of the things that the child's foot likes to be. Answer. The foot would like to be a butterfly or an apple. 2. The child's foot is not yet aware it's a foot. Line 1 of the poem conveys a. The immense possibilities of life. B. The unrestricted nature of a child's imagination. C. The child's ignorance of harsh realities. Answer. B and C. The unrestricted nature of a child's imagination, the child's ignorance of harsh realities. 3. What does time teach the child? Answer. Time teaches the foot that it cannot fly and also cannot be a fruit on the branch of a tree. 4. The line, stones and bits of glass, streets, ladders and the paths in the rough earth. A. Indicates hardships one has to face in life. B. Provides a mere description of a road. C. Suggests the good and bad experiences of growing up. Answer. A. Indicates hardships one has to face in life. 5. Why does the child's foot feel defeated? Answer. The child's foot feels defeated because it has to live like a prisoner, condemned to live in a shoe, and it can never be free to escape from the difficulties of life. 6. Mention the words that convey the real experiences of the foot. Answer. The words, stones and bits of glass, streets, ladders, and the paths in the rough earth convey the real experiences of the child's foot. 7. Identify the lines in the poem that suggest the transformation of the foot. Answer. Lines 17 to 28 suggest the transformation of the foot. These soft nails of quartz, a coarsely hard to accept. 8. Dash is condemned to live in a shoe suggests that the foot is A. A prisoner. B. A criminal. C. Forced to give up its dreams. Answer. A and C. A criminal forced to give up its dreams. 9. What does the line, until the whole man chooses to stop, mean? Or, when does the foot stop to walk in Neruda's poem? Answer. The line, until the whole man chooses to stop, means until the person dies. Or the foot stops to walk when the person dies. To the foot from its child comprehension 2. 1. We think of a foot as a part of the human body, but Neruda says, to the foot from its child. Why? Answer. We think of a foot physically as belonging to a person, but Neruda sees in a philosophical way and says, to the foot from its child. Though it belongs to a person physically, philosophically, like the child who is the symbol of innocence, the foot also does know about its future. But in adulthood, it faces many challenges of life and gets an overall experience and leads a meaningful life until the end. Finally, it is attacked by diseases and surrendered to death. 2. Pick out the expressions that suggest the child's imagination is fertile. Answer. The expressions, to be a butterfly, or an apple, cannot fly, cannot be a fruit bulging on the branch, suggest that the child's imagination is fertile. 3. What contrasting descriptions of the foot does the poem offer? Why? Answer. The poet Pablo Neruda presents a contrasting description of a child's foot and an adult's foot so as to delineate the changes that are seen in a person's life as he or she changes from an infant into an adult, until his death. Initially, the child or the infant's foot has soft nails of quartz and its toes are tiny, soft, and rounded at the tips like the petals of some flowers. As the child learns to walk and starts walking on stones, bits of glass, streets, ladders and the rough surface of the earth, the child's foot becomes aware of its role. It learns that it is a foot and cannot become a butterfly or a bulging fruit on a tree. Once it realizes that it is a foot, it is defeated in realizing its aspirations and gets imprisoned in a shoe. Inside the shoe, it tries to understand the world in its own way, alone, like a blind man groping in the dark. During this period, its soft nails of quartz become opaque, are bunched together, and look like eyeless reptiles with triangular heads, grow calloused, and are covered with faint volcanoes of death. These changes happen because, once the child's foot becomes an adult's foot, it walks as the foot of a man or woman and keeps walking in the fields as a farmer, or as a grocer in the markets, or as a miner in the mines, or as a church minister or a government worker, until its death. Thus, the foot experiences the hardships of life and loses its soft and flowery petal-like form. 4. The poem begins with the idea that a child's foot is not yet aware that it is a foot. At the end, the foot is unaware that it had ceased to be a foot. What is the poet trying to convey through these statements? Or explain the similarity between the foot's early life and its end as depicted in To the Foot from Its Child. Answer. In this poem, foot is a metaphor for life. The poet Neruda using the foot as a metaphor to explore life through its various stages from infancy through childhood until death. When the poem begins, the foot is the infant's foot which suggests man's childhood. The child's foot does not know that it is a foot. This state refers to the innocence of childhood where man has many dreams and aspirations. The child's wish to become a butterfly or an apple stands for man's aspirations and dreams. Once the child's foot enters the real world, it starts walking over stones, bits of glass, streets, ladders, and the rough surface of the earth. Thus, as the child grows over a period of time, the child's foot realizes that it is only a foot and cannot become fruit or a butterfly. Then, since it has to serve its role as a foot, it is imprisoned in a shoe. Inside the shoe, it tries to understand the world alone, in isolation. The child's foot, as it grows old, serves as the foot of a man or a woman working in the fields, or market or mines or ministries and toils hard day and night until it dies. When it dies, the foot loses its human awareness, and that is why when it is buried the foot again gets its childlike innocence. It again dreams of becoming an apple or a butterfly. It is this journey from childhood through adulthood and the final death that the poem focuses on. Pablo Neruda is saying that life and death are part of a continuous cycle. Secondly, the poet wishes to say that the freedom of childhood is lost when a person becomes an adult and faces a life of constant work and struggle. Thus, life takes away people's free spirits until they are freed again by death. 5. How does Neruda describe the busy life of the individual as represented by the foot? Answer. The foot is used as a metaphor for life, and the foot refers to the foot of an individual. Once the child develops into an adult, the adult keeps on walking without respite either as a man or as a woman. The individual spends his life working either as a farmer in a field, or as a miner in mines, or as a salesperson in the market, or as a government servant, or as a church minister. This way the individual toils hard in society until his death. To the foot from its child. Comprehension 3. 1. Examine how Neruda's poem works out the contrast between colorful dreams and the humdrum reality of life. Or, the poem, To the Foot from Its Child, represents the conflict between illusion and reality. Elaborate. Answer. The poem, To the Foot from Its Child, presents a contrast between colorful dreams and the humdrum reality of life. The poet conveys his view of life through his description of a foot. The foot is a metaphor for expressing the crushing of a child's spirit through the challenges and restrictions that life places upon him. One can undoubtedly infer that the poem is basically a criticism of how people force children to grow in society and forget all their dreams and imaginations. With a view to delineating the forces that capture the child's freedom and aspirations, the poet begins the poem making a statement directly that the child's foot, which is not aware that it is a foot, would like to be a butterfly or an apple. From this one can infer that man's spirit dreams of enjoying unlimited freedom in this world, but it comes to know that it cannot enjoy unlimited freedom and has to pass through several obstacles before it matures into an adult. But, in time, stones and bits of glass, streets, ladders, paths in the rough earth go on teaching the foot that it cannot fly. As the infant is growing and developing into a mature adult, he is exposed to the harsh realities of life, which are metaphorically expressed as stones, bits of glass, ladder, street, etc. These are the problems and obstacles an individual has to face. Thus, once the child becomes a boy, an adolescent, and an adult, the problems of life teach the individual that he is a mortal and his powers are limited and can only serve the society as a member like other human beings. This sense is expressed in the line that it cannot fly, cannot become a fruit and is defeated, falls in the battle, is a prisoner condemned to live in a shoe. Here, the shoe can be taken to mean the human society that regulates his mind and activities. Wearing the shoe refers to the infant becoming a mature adult. Soon after entering adulthood, the individual explores life within the shoe. He loses touch with the reality of the outside world but experiences the world through the eyes of society. This again means that a lot of restrictions are imposed on the individual. Now that he is an adult, he keeps on walking without respite through the fields, mines, markets, and ministries. The line, "This foot toils in its shoe, scarcely taking time to bear itself in love or sleep," expresses the fact that once he realizes that he is a man destined to live in a society, he learns to face the humdrum realities of life. He has no time to let his human spirit indulge in love and sleep. He is a prisoner and keeps on working until he dies. Once he dies, his spirit loses its human awareness and is once again as free as the children. 2. Neruda's poem is a salute to the ordinary human being who continues with life braving all odds. Do you agree? Give reasons. Answer: yes. In this poem, Neruda tries to delineate the journey of human life from its infancy to death and beyond. With a view to expressing the changes that the life spirit undergoes through its journey from an infant to an adult and beyond death, Neruda uses foot as a metaphor. That is why he calls life during infancy as the infant foot and the life spirit of an adult as the adult foot. The whole poem can be summed up as a surrender of life force to societal pressures. During infancy, the child's spirit dreams of infinite possibilities and hence dreams of becoming a fruit or a butterfly. Once it starts growing in society, the harsh realities of life expressed as stones, bits of glass, ladder, and rough surface of the earth teach the infant spirit that it is a foot, which means you have a role to play in the society and you are an individual subservient to the whims and fancies of the society. Once the infant spirit gradually accepts its defeat and tries to live in conformity with the norms of the society, it becomes an adult. This is expressed metaphorically as the foot being imprisoned in a shoe. Once you become a member of the society, you learn to live like others, giving up your pleasures, and gradually you get to know the realities of life. You go on slogging throughout your life without indulging in love and sleep, which symbolically represent your rights on this earth. You forgo your rights and live like an adult and serve the society until you die and you get your freedom after your death. As long as your life spirit is in your body, you have human awareness and you are aware of your limitations. Once you die, you lose human awareness and your spirit is free to enjoy its freedom. In the poem, Neruda does not speak of the possibilities of the human spirit rebelling. Nor does he say that human spirit is being crushed by oppressive forces. The human spirit does not commit suicide rebelliously. On the contrary, he describes the journey of the human spirit as an infant's foot until it becomes an adult foot, and after its death how it becomes free again. From this, it can be argued that Neruda's poem is a salute to the human spirit for braving all odds and completing one cycle of life and death peacefully, and not rebelliously. Thanks for watching. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to WebSeek.Academy for more English lessons and notes. See you in the next video. Until then, keep learning and keep growing.